Okay, this week we have absolutely one of the rising academic stars in orthopedic surgery, Robert Parisian, who is an assistant professor at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Good. This is just such a great story. He's literally 3 years into practice, but he took a bunch of time off after medical school. He's a Division I football player for Brown, and sort of took a little circuitous route, but then got into medicine. And his relationship building is unbelievable. He's literally worked with some of the greatest sports medicine mentors and professors in our country, and he did 3 fellowships and found the perfect academic job. He's on all sorts of editorial boards. He's writing amazing research on a routine and regular basis. Huge patient advocate. We talk about some of the things that he does in his specialty work as well out of Mount Sinai. But I really, really enjoyed this episode, and I am convinced that he is going to be the next Bill Levine 20 years down the road. Dr. Scott Sigmund, hashtag follow the fro, host of the Ortho Show.
From medical media, this is the Ortho Show.
Hello, world. Dr. Scott Sigmund, your favorite opioid-sparing orthopedic surgeon, here for another episode of the Ortho Show podcast, where everyone knows we bring the best of the best. We have become the biographers of orthopedics. We're excited today. We have Dr. Robert Parisian on, who is an orthopedic surgeon, specializes in sports medicine and hip preservation. He's an assistant professor at the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York. Robert, it is a pleasure to have you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. So listen, we always start at the beginning. We want to know, where and when. Where were you born? Were there other doctors in the family? When did this whole orthopedic thing sort of come to mind for you? And we'll sort of start there.
Yeah, so I'm born and raised in a little small mill town called Biddeford, Maine. So I don't know if you're that familiar with Maine, but it's between Portland and
Lobster rolls, great lobster rolls up at Biddeford, Maine, for sure.
That's right, exactly. So it's right there between Portland and Kennebunkport, about an hour and a half north of Boston. So Boston is really our major city growing up. Like many orthopedic surgeons, I was an athlete growing up. Football, baseball, basketball, ran track. I was a competitive bump skier when I was younger, and had multiple injuries and got introduced to orthopedic surgeons along that process. And so that's when I first really just got introduced and had an interest in pursuing this as a career.
Very common story amongst so many of us sports medicine orthopedic surgeons as well. Are you the first doctor in the family, or has there been others as well?
In my immediate family, it's interesting. My cousin of the same name, Robert Parisian, who was an Olympic downhill skier, practices in New Hampshire right now. And so he's from Maine. He grew up skiing in Sugarloaf. And then I was on sort of the junior Olympic team, my brother, and we were skiing bumps. And so since we had the same name, I'd get his mail, he'd get my mail. And then lo and behold, anyways, after he went and skied in the Olympics and he went and trained and became an orthopedic surgeon, trained in the Harvard system. So then when I came through residency in Boston, people would look at me, funny with the last name. We're not, he's just a bit older than I, so they weren't quite sure what the relationship was there, but yeah, we're cousins. So it's a good thing. He was a great resident. He was well liked, and so that really helped me when I went through. So.
Yeah, no, there's not, it's not often that you can find another doctor with the same name that's not too far away from you. So I can imagine how that could potentially have been a predicament for you, for sure. All right, so you're a New England guy, and you decide you're going to go to Brown for college. I mean, it's a natural thing to be able to sort of stay in the New England area, and at that point, were you thinking, med school, it's going to be the orthopedic thing? Was it an early grind for you?
Yeah, so when I was in, like I said, high school, I really wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon. I mean, I was fortunate that the gentleman who happened to be my orthopedic surgeon operated on me was Doug Brown, who at the time was the president of the AOSSM and is now in the Hall of Fame. Of course, I didn't know that at the time when I was a young high school athlete, but so he was a great mentor of mine and really influenced me. So I went to Brown. I played football. I was recruited to play football, and the intent was to be pre-med. So I started pre-med, but then I switched to economics, given the rigors of a year-round Division I football. And then I sort of came back to medicine after about 5 years or so after college, working in different industries. I worked in New Delhi, India, in business development, and then I was actually a junior agent in Los Angeles for the Creative Artists Agency before coming back to medicine.
Wow, that's fantastic. I mean, I have a similar story in that J.R. Richmond scoped my knee in college, which was
Okay.
what, and then he's like, why do we want to let you in here on our residency? I was like, because you scoped my knee 5 years ago and I'm here. And he was like, all right, we'll let you in. But I think that's great because I was trying to figure it out because your medical CV from 2003 to 2007 had a little bit more than just a gap year. So you've answered our question. You were outside doing other things. And again, as a Division I football player, it's a full-time job. It's really hard
Mhm.
get your prerequisites done and do all the things that you need to do for medical school. So you basically you went to NYU for post grad so you can make that stuff and get going, right? Was that pretty much the premise?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, right after, like I said, I worked and lived in New Delhi, India, business development, then moved to LA, worked as a junior agent. And then, yeah, to get my prereqs, I went to NYU. And when I was there, I shadowed. I got experience, I observed. So I spent a lot of time with folks at HSS, David Olczyk and Tom Skolko in particular. Bill Levine was a great influence in my life and still is, and is a very close mentor of mine. And it took me in as a pre-medical student, allowed me to shadow him in the office, in the operating room, and things like that. And then some of the folks here at Mount Sinai. So I was really fortunate to have that experience during that time.
That's great. We're going to come back to Bill Levine because I have some thoughts about him in my notes where I was thinking about you as I was doing my research. So that's a great segue. But so then you decided you're going to be a jumbo. And, I went to Tufts undergrad and did my residency at Tufts, but went to
Mhm.
medical school elsewhere. But so there you're getting some really cool sports as well. You got J.R. Richmond at the time, who's over at the Baptist, right? And then you're getting that whole experience. So tell us about your residency experience. Chuck Cassidy was your chairman at the time, I'm assuming as well. So give us that story for sure.
Yeah, so Dr. Cassidy was very influential for me, and again was a wonderful mentor. So I did my med school at Tufts, and I went into medicine to be an orthopedic sports medicine surgeon specifically. Many people try to figure out along the way, but that was my reasoning. And so then that was a great experience there. And then I did my residency at Boston University under Paul Tornetta. And so again, still a wonderful mentor and close mentor of mine. So I had a great opportunity there as well. It was nice to train in Boston. So through it all, and then through a fellowship when I came back, we can get into that. I ended up training at every single hospital in Boston, except for the BI, and so I had a
Well,
great
for
experience throughout.
for a kid from Biddeford, Maine, that's pretty cool, right? I mean, that's Boston was your hub. That's where you grew up. That's where you went to the big city. So obviously, Paul Tornetta is the current president of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery. And was
Yep.
Tiger there? Had Tiger started at that point?
So Tiger came in when I was an intern, so we started pretty much at the same time, and for me that was just a wonderful thing, because as you know, he's a high volume surgeon. He's very academic, does a lot of research. He's very passionate, and so he became a mentor. And then now I would say he's one of my closest friends, and he's a big research partner. So we do a lot of projects together, and we have been ever since.
Yeah, that's Tiger Lee for everybody, not Tiger Woods,
Yes.
but we have a Tiger in orthopedics as well. And Tiger Lee's a fantastic sports medicine specialist. And for me, as the team physician for UMass Lowell for 27 years, I would take care of your BU team, and then you guys would take care of my UMass Lowell Riverhawks when we had away games down at BU as well. So
Yep.
that's a great combination, great history. So you're really trained by the best sports medicine orthopedic surgeons in Boston through your residency. And then as well, you decide to stick around for your fellowship with Tiger
Mhm.
as well. And you either, it's funny because we're going to go through all three of your fellowships, which is highly unusual, but I appreciate you're going to tell us why you did that. I think it's important for our listeners to know why you were not a foreign medical grad. You didn't have to do three fellowships. So let's start off with Tiger and the BU fellowship first.
So again, when Tyler came in, we formed a good, close relationship, and the idea was that I would stay at BU, work directly with him as a resident under him. He knew me well. He knew my strengths, my weaknesses, and so it was a good opportunity to continue that on, and then to really operate with him because he did a lot of sports medicine, cartilage restoration, but then some complex shoulder surgery, which I still do, and you don't get some of that training in a typical sports fellowship. And so that was a great opportunity to stay there, spend some time with him, and do that fellowship. So
I look at Tiger, he's like the cowboy of sports medicine in Boston, man. He's like, he's like Mikey from the old commercial, he'll do anything, it's like osteochondral allografts, osteotomies, and he takes everything, all types of insurance at BU. That's what you do, right? You're
Yeah.
not in it just, for the money and prestige. You're doing it to take care of the people. That's where his career has been. So he's just, I'm sure, was a fantastic mentor.
Well, Tiger had done his sports at HSS, and then he did a second fellowship in shoulder and elbow at Harvard with JP Warner. And so, he was very comfortable doing any sports things, obviously, from the training that he had at HSS. And then he had a lot of the complex shoulder from JP Warner. And so for me, that was a great opportunity to, learn from all of them kind of through him. And so that's why that really shaped my sports practice, and obviously why I do some complex shoulder today, which the average, I guess, sort of maybe sports doc doesn't necessarily do with the muscle transfers and things like that. So
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, we certainly can talk
yeah.
about some of that cool stuff that you're doing. But from there, it's down to Philly, which is, for a Boston guy, I mean, that's, you've grown up with all these championships for the Celtics, the Bruins, the Patriots, the Red Sox. We don't get along too well with the Philly sports guys, but you're down there for a sports medicine fellowship. You're going to learn a little bit more about cartilage restoration as well. So tell us about that.
Well, yeah. Beyond that, beyond just being a Boston sports fan and having to go down to Philly, I was a Brown, football player, and then I
Sure.
had to come down and work with Penn, and then be a team doc for Penn. But
That's right. I love it.
yeah, exactly. And so that was tough. It was interesting. I talked to Brian Sennett, who's the chief of sports medicine down there. Again, great mentor and friend. He played baseball at Brown, so we were both former Brown athletes. And so when I went down and we had sort of discussed this, he said, "Yeah, it took me a little bit of a transition as well." And I said, "I'm not going to lie, I might be wearing my Brown T-shirt underneath my Penn jacket, covering these games."
I love it. That's fantastic. I
But it was a
love it.
great opportunity. I mean, I had played on Franklin Field twice, during my collegiate career, and to cover Penn athletics was incredible. And then to do it with Brian Sennett, I got to say, Brian Sennett. We'll get into other things too, obviously, but Brian Sennett is, one of the, if not the greatest sort of sports doc that I've been around. He just loves athletes, cares about the team, and just really loves being a team doc. And so it was really great experience to learn and observe that from him, and truly learn how to be a team doc through him.
All right, so let's push you here a little bit, right? I mean, most people do a fellowship for a couple of reasons, right? Maybe you're filling a gap that you missed in your residency. That clearly wasn't the case. You wanted to hone your skills. I'm assuming, and I'm guessing, you're thinking strategically here, because you got academics written on your forehead all day long, brother. I mean, you could, the amount of papers that you've written, you're on editorial boards, you're on all the societies. I mean, it's clear, what your path was going to be. But tell us why you chose a second sports fellowship. I can understand the Harvard hip one, which we'll get to next, but what was the
Yes.
rationale for doing a second fellowship within sports and cartilage?
So I'd known Dr. Sennett, and so we had sort of discussed, and then they had a very strong cartilage aspect to their program, and they all do a lot of cards, but specifically through James Carey, right? So James Carey does he's one of the highest volume and most respected cartilage experts in the country, and so to get the opportunity to go down and train under him and really truly understand why he was doing things, what he was doing, understand his techniques, and then as you know, he's an associate editor of AJSM, and he's a very prolific researcher, and so that was really one of the selling points for me to go down and spend that time with them.
So having patience, I mean, I really think it's fascinating because you took, 4 or 5 years to get back into medicine. You'd think that perhaps, it's time to go out and get a job and, start earning some money, a family, all those stuff that we typically do. But yet you were patient. You were continuing to sort of push the envelope of your education to broaden your horizons for your eventual starting job. And so you recognize that hip arthroscopy was something that was truly developing. You probably didn't get as much hip arthroscopy as you wanted, perhaps, in your residency and those two fellowships, maybe. So you decided, if I'm going to be a hip arthroscopist and add that to my repertoire of things I do, I better learn about it.
Well, and that was the same thing with Penn and the decision to go down there. I mean, I think that coming back to it a bit older and having that experience, it was a marathon, not a sprint. And I think that I even talk to medical students, residents now, and discuss that, and they have to really accept that. And so for me, I thought that going down, getting that experience at Penn, and then eventually we'll get into the Harvard one with the hip, that was going to benefit me greatly, and it has. So I knew I wanted to do cartilage as a subspecialty of sports. And then, look, when you meet John Kelly and he pulls you in, and that personality and that warmth, you can't say no. So I was hooked at the Penn Fellowship at that time. So then I got some experience doing hip arthroscopy with John Kelly. Actually, he does a fair amount of hip down there, and then even some in my residency when I trained at Boston Children's Hospital with young Joe Kim and all of them there. And so that's when I decided, at that point in time that I'd like to do hip preservation. I reached out to guys, reached out to Dr. Safran, reached out to Ben Dome, Philippon, and then all my, people that I knew up in Boston. They sort of discussed how do I go about doing this, and basically, they sort of said, look, if you want to go in academics and you really truly want to do hip preservation, consider doing, yes, I know, a third fellowship in hip preservation.
So there you are. So
yeah,
so now you're like the guru of cartilage. You're doing everything that's possibly involved in sports, whether it's arthroscopic this, arthroscopic that. You're doing complex shoulder stuff as well. So, dude, you're ready. You're finally ready. It's 2021. I'm supposing you get, and then you go through the process, and it is not easy to find a
yep.
true academic position in sports medicine. There's lots of jobs out there that you can take, but you must have, I'm assuming that somewhere in the midst of this whole fellowship stuff, you're making some conversations and some pathways, and hopefully you're having that place that you're going to land for the exact job that you're looking for.
Well, yeah, and you're exactly right. I mean, especially with all this training, you'd think that there might be some more opportunities, but I'll throw something else in there. It was COVID. So
Hmm.
there were no job opportunities, or very few. And then, clearly for me it was academics. I wanted to be in a major city. New York was preferable. But I certainly would have lived in Boston or Philly and enjoyed that time there. But again, it was COVID. It was a challenging time. So yeah, you're right. I reached out to mentors, had a lot of discussions, mentors who then reached out to other people on my behalf, and you sort of know how it goes. And then I was fortunate enough to get a couple opportunities, and ended up coming down to Mount Sinai. But it's interesting because I came to Mount Sinai again as a pre-medical student. I shadowed Brad Parsons, James Gladstone, and Andy Hecht, our chief of spine here, who was also a Brown grad. And so I got to know them very well and stayed in touch over that time. And then when I ended up looking for a job, I reached out to them. And I remember Andy Hecht calling me back. We had multiple conversations, and he was really instrumental in me coming down here to Mount Sinai.
Yeah, James Gladstone's one of my favorites. He's just what
Yeah,
a bench sweetheart of a guy. We adore
yeah,
him. It's interesting. I think that for our listeners out there, our young listeners out there, we have a ton of medical students and residents, and I think there's a really clear message here, and that is relationship building. And you did that, throughout your entire medical career. And I think, perhaps coming into this a little bit later, having some time off in the business world, I think probably really helped you in that regard as well. But you cannot start too early in developing your relationships. And I can sense you're going to be that great mentor to those that are coming behind you from the mentors that you've had before. And we're gonna bring up Bill Levidio a little bit, because I was laughing as I was reading your CV. Bill and I grew up together in orthopedics, and I'm like, dude, you're Bill Levine. I mean, you're going to be the future president of the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgery. You're going to be a chairman somewhere. I'm like, your record and the things that you're doing, it's such a similar path. And so I didn't even know that you had spent time with Bill as a pre-med student. So I think it's even more clear to me that you're on such an amazing path as well. So look, how's it going in New York, man? It's easy. You're just going to open up a practice in New York. There's no good sports medicine orthopedic surgeons in New York. There's no competition there. You just
that's
hang up a shingle and there you go. How's it going?
that's right. That's right. Oh, I think look, at the end of the day, it's old-fashioned hard work. And again, going back to these mentors, I'm fortunate to have great ones, and so of course I discuss with them, talk to them. What do you think? What do you recommend? And one of them, yes, is Bill Levine. And so who knows the New York system and the New York market, and sort of how to get busy here better than he. And then also David Olczyk at HSS and others. But I remember with Tom Gill. So Tom Gill from up in Boston is a good mentor of mine. When I was at Tufts medical student, I went and shadowed him one day per week during my entire medical school career. And as David Olczyk introduced me to him. So I remember him saying, and still to this day, he said to me, when you get started in practice, especially if you're academic in a major city, sports medicine's tough. Act like you're a resident again. Build your practice for 5 years, dedicate and work hard and build your foundations. And of course, you're gonna be working hard after that, but really build your foundations and act like a resident. Don't think that you made it, just because you're in attending somewhere now. Put your head down and really, and double time. And as you know, that's the way Bill Levine, I think, has done his entire career. There's really no one that's going to work hard or outwork him. So I had great examples to go off of.
Yeah, I say it all the time. Bill Levine is the greatest mentor of his generation, for
Mhm.
sure. He is just just always just so gracious with his time and being able to help regardless of where you are in your status in your career. And so great lessons and really great messaging that you're providing, Robert, for our listeners. So we really appreciate that. So
Well,
listen,
so
yeah, please go.
sorry, I was going to say that it's interesting. When I was a pre-medical student, he took me in right away, and I was chatting with him. Now I'm involved with the Medical Student Orthopedic Society. I'm not sure if
He
you're
just
familiar with that.
posted today and I'm signing up for the record. I'll be there, but go for
Yeah,
it.
no, I'm going to say, and so I'm a faculty advisor now on that, and I think that, and I would expect you'd see sort of people in my generation that are getting involved, and again, when I first got introduced to the society, Bill Levine was already a major player and advisor to that group, and again, it just shows that even now, this many years later, he is still doing this. He still is as involved as ever, if not more so, in that education and mentorship. So.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, we're getting to 60 this year, so we're the gray hairs in the room now for sure. But well, look, let's just talk a little bit about cartilage. We don't like to spend too much time being too technical on the show. My mother Judy's listening, but there's some cool stuff happening in cartilage that really is really starting to take off. I think that you've got Cartaheel, which was the Israeli
Mhm.
company that was purchased by Smith and Nephew, which is the coral that can be sort of implanted for bone and cartilage loss. Macy is rumored to be developing an arthroscopic approach to being able to place, the cartilage that we can grow in culture, grow your cartilage, and then put it back into the knee. Where do you see us going with cartilage and some of these exciting things?
Well, it's exactly where I see it is the sort of the technological advances, right? And so, I think Macy and the generation that we have now is interesting, and it's great, and it works very well. As you know, I use a lot of Macy, especially in the patellofemoral joint. But really, if there's no subchondral edema, or if you have an intact subchondral bone plate, then I think Macy is a great option. And the arthro Macy is interesting because, like anything else, if we can get more minimally invasive, do something that's arthroscopic assisted, limit our incisions on the patients, and then still have the same quality and outcome. I mean, I think that's a wonderful scenario. Interesting that you mentioned the Cartaheel, the aragonite, because I'm a member of the New York Cartilage Repair Society, which Eric Strauss has done an incredible job, starting and really getting going, and then Alexander Gallant is really taking it over with him now, growing this. Ken Zaslov was the recent guest speaker this year, and his involvement with Cartaheel, and in listening him to talk about it, and the way in which they've developed it, it's really been done in a very thoughtful manner and appropriate manner, and adjusting and fixing a lot of the kinks along the way. So I think it's very promising. I think it's interesting, and allows us to now at this point potentially address some of those larger defects that we've weren't really sure exactly what to do, and what we call these sort of gray zone patients, right? The young athletic patient who has preserved joint space and diffuse chondral loss, but is not ready for a total knee. You don't want to just be doing visco and PRP injections forever. You'd like to have some sort of a solution. Maybe this could be that. We'll see.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And I completely agree. They're both, sort of fascinating things. I think the Macy thing is so cool because, I know Roland well, who's been with the company forever for 30 years. It's such a remarkable product. They've done so much homework on the
Mhm.
payment side, right? So many of the things that we try to do are poo-pooed by insurance. They don't want to pay for it, but they've done all of the homework. And even though this thing is relatively expensive, you can get it put in at your ASC or at your hospital because they've worked with the insurance companies to develop these programs. So I think for them, it's almost as important as the technology is the way in which they've been able to figure out the reimbursement side of things as well. But really cool. So we got a lot of cool things coming in cartilage as well. One of the things that you've just done recently, which I really wanted to share, was you took time out of your academic private practice and you did the Anna Traveling Fellowship. So let's share a little bit about that. I think our listeners would love to know, where did you go? But not just that, but what's it about? It's a big deal to take time away and go learn from others, right? So tell us about it.
Yeah, so I was initially introduced to these traveling fellowships through Tiger and others that had done them, that are sort of prolific and have been out there, done the traveling fellowships. And I heard from them what a great experience it was. The networks they made, the connections they made, and what they learned along the way. And so I always knew it was going to be something that I wanted to pursue. As you've seen, I'm very involved with ANA, as same with AOSSM as well. And again, speaking with my mentors, I looked at what the locations were for the year. It was going to be Missouri, UPenn, and then go back out to Boston for New England Baptist and Tufts. And so I thought it was going to be a great opportunity. So I applied, got accepted. It is a 2-week traveling fellowship. So yes, you take 2 weeks away from your practice. There's 3 other orthopedic surgeons that I travel with, and then the godfather, so the sort of senior orthopedic surgeon that traveled with us this year was Thomas Bird.
So you taught him everything you know about hip arthroscopy.
It's interesting to spend time with one of the fathers of hip arthroscopy, someone who was doing his first hip scope in 1990 when Gans only came out with the description of FAI in 2003. So he was 13 years prior to FAI, which is, the major reason why we perform hip arthroscopy today. He was already scoping it to remove loose bodies and things of that nature. So just completely ahead of it. He and Sampson and others just completely ahead of the curve. And look, they took a lot of grief back in the day, and they just kept pushing forward. And as Bird will say, just doing what he felt was the right thing by the patient. So, for someone who developed the field and who was one of the first folks doing that, I'd say I learned a lot more about life in those 2 weeks from Bird than I really did about orthopedics.
That's awesome, though. I mean,
So,
I'll
yeah.
tell you a funny story. So I'm with Joe McCarthy at the Baptist in like 1994, right? And Joe is obviously still one of the earlier hip arthroscopists.
Yeah.
And to be perfectly honest with you, it's like, dude, we're in. And it's like, we
Mm-hmm.
got into the hip joint. I'm like, what do we do now? I'm like, not really sure, but we actually got in this time. And then we put a shaver in and we would debride a little bit. We weren't doing a lot back then, but in the infancy of hip arthroscopy, it was fascinating to be a part of it for sure. But what an amazing, so you truly enjoyed your 2 weeks, the travel, your camaraderie, etc.
Well, yeah, it was an incredible 2 weeks. I mean, it's really it's an invaluable experience that I would recommend for any orthopedic surgeon that's interested in doing it. From multiple standpoints, right? Again, to spend 2 weeks with someone like Dr. Bird, and to really learn again not just about orthopedics but about life from someone like that. To spend that time with 3 other folks. So is Lieutenant Colonel Daniel Son from the Army, who's at Walter Reed, Giovanna Medina, who is at MGH, and Louis Shee, who's at University of Chicago. To go through along that experience with them and get to know them and learn from them was great. And then we spent time again at Missouri, Penn, and New England Baptist and Tufts, and to see how when I was an athlete, I always loved going, seeing different facilities, seeing other fields and how other teams did things. I just in other universities. This is no different, right? You're going to other medical centers, other academic institutions. You're seeing how they function, both clinically and from a research scenario, and you learn, and then you share what you know, and you share what you've learned along the way. And so I think that entire process, again, is invaluable. Never mind the social and the networking aspects of it, which we can get into, but it was an incredible experience all around. Definitely well worth the 2 weeks.
What I really greatly appreciate is the fact that you chronicled it. You shared your journey. You were telling us all about what you were doing and where you were going, and you were sending pictures back home. And, we were following along with you, and I really enjoyed it, which is exactly why you're on the Ortho Show today. I mean, that really, struck something for me. So listen, how long have you been in practice now?
3 years.
So you're 3 years going on 20 years in orthopedic years as far as your practice is concerned. I'm writing a book, Physician Brand RX, with my buddy Matthew Ray Scott, and we have a few things which we say is, you are what you say you are what your colleagues say you are, and you are what Google says you are. So, what's your brand? What's your message? What do you want to be known for amongst your peers? What do you want your patients to know about you?
Well, what I want my patients to know about me is that I actually care about my patients and that I care about their outcomes. I mean, I have strong, close personal relationships with physical therapy companies, for example, all throughout the city. I have gone to every single center multiple times. I have them on, I have all of them. They have my cell phone. I can tell you who is at what facility, at what location, almost tell you the cross streets for all these. And so why? It's because I really care and with the care all around the collaborative care that they're getting. So I want my patients to know that despite all these other things, the research and the traveling fellowships, that at the end of the day, I really care about treating patients, and that's why I got into this. Because I was a patient. I don't know how many times I have a patient and that comes to me, and I look at their post-operative external rotation and I compare mine with theirs because when I had my slap tear, down to my anterior glandar labrum tear. So I've been on the table. I know what it's like, and so that's primarily why I'm here. Is to do best by them, and so that they understand that I truly care about them.
I'm going to brand you. I'm going to make your avatar right now. Patient advocate, relationship builder, academic rising star, mentee, and mentor. So you're only 3 years into practice, dude. You're doing an amazing job. It's so impressive, the resume that you've already built, the relationships that you've built, where you're going in your career. I have no doubt we are going to continue to hear from you, and you are going to continue to rise up in the academic world. And Bill Levine, he'll be very proud of you one day when you're going to be sitting in his chair, is what I'm going to say out loud. But no, listen, Robert, it's been a pleasure having you on. Your story is fantastic, and we're so very pleased that we could share it today.
Oh, that means a lot coming from you, Scott, because again, we talk about leaders, we talk about mentors. You are one of them, and everybody understands that. Everybody knows that, and especially when we talk about connectors and relationship builders. I mean, I really don't think anyone does it as well as you. And so it's an honor to be here on the show, but to have you say that and hear that come from you, it really means a lot. So thank you, appreciate it.
Well, those are great, kind words, and it is such an honor for us here on the Ortho Show to be able to share the remarkable stories of our guests, and you certainly do have a remarkable story, Robert. This is Dr. Scott Sigman, #FollowTheFro, host of the Ortho Show. Till next time.